The grand arena buzzed with nervous energy as cadets from 40 different species packed the viewing stands. Danny Walsh sat near the back, his boots propped on the seat in front of him until a six-legged insectoid cadet gave him a clicking sound that probably meant disapproval. He dropped his feet with an apologetic shrug. This whole orientation week had been one confusing cultural moment after another. Down on the arena floor, a crystalline being from the Shard world had just finished presenting their homeworld's dominant predator. The thing looked like living glass with too many joints, and it had made several cadets in the front rows scramble backward when it lunged at the reinforced barrier. The presenter seemed pleased with the reaction. Danny yawned. Back home in Montana, his family's barn cat was probably more dangerous than half the creatures he'd seen today. At least old Tom knew how to hunt mice instead of just looking scary. The insectoid cadet next to him leaned over, antennae twitching. "You are not impressed by the demonstrations?" "They're all right," Danny said. "Just seems like a lot of showing off, you know. I am Prill of the Hive-Born Collective. This is my first time away from my colony world. Everything here frightens me." Prill's translator device made his voice sound tinny and uncertain. "Danny Walsh, Earth. And hey, being scared just means you're paying attention. That's smart." Before Prill could respond, the arena lights dimmed. A deep voice boomed through the speakers, and the translation came through crystal clear. "Honored cadets and instructors, the Sarthen Dominion now presents the apex predator of our glorious homeworld." Commander Rilthak strode onto the arena floor. The Sarthen stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in scales that shifted between green and bronze. His eyes were cold and calculating, and his tail swept behind him with obvious pride. Behind him, 6 Sarthen soldiers struggled to control a massive reinforced container that hummed with energy barriers. "For 300 generations, my people have ruled our world," Rilthak announced. "We earned that right through strength, through cunning, through the blood of our ancestors who faced the deadliest predator our planet ever produced. Other species here today evolved as prey, as scavengers, as opportunists hiding in the shadows. The Sarthen evolved as hunters. And this is why. The container's walls fell away with a thunderous crash. The creature that emerged made the crystalline hunter look like a house pet. It stood 12 feet at the shoulder, built like a tank wrapped in armored plates. 6 legs, ending in claws that scarred the arena floor. A head that was mostly teeth, arranged in 3 rows of interlocking daggers. Its eyes glowed a sulfurous yellow, and when it roared, the sound rattled Danny's ribcage even from 50 yards away. Cadets screamed. Some of the smaller species tried to climb over each other toward the exits. One aquatic being in a water-filled suit actually fainted, their support system going haywire. "This is Vornis," Rilthak continued over the panic. "The undisputed master of the Sarthen wilderness. Even our finest warriors treat these beasts with utmost respect. They fear nothing. They bow to nothing. And they have made my people the strongest military force in this sector of space." The Vornis paced the arena floor, testing the barriers with swipes of its claws. Energy crackled where it made contact. The creature seemed annoyed, but not particularly interested in the hundreds of cadets watching. It was more focused on the Sarthen handlers, who kept their weapons ready and maintained a careful distance. Prill was shaking beside Danny, his exoskeleton clicking rapidly. "This is a creature of nightmares. How does anyone survive such a thing?" "Looks mean, sure," Danny admitted, watching the way the Vornis moved. "But see how it keeps checking the exits? And the way it's holding its head low? Things scared out of its mind being here." "Scared? That monster? Yeah. New place, bright lights, lots of noise and strange smells. Poor thing probably just wants to go home." Rilthak was building to his conclusion, voice rising with pride. "This is what true evolutionary dominance looks like. This is what separates predator species from prey. Let those who doubt the Sarthen military might gaze upon Vornis and understand what we have overcome to reach the stars." The arena fell silent except for the Vornis's growling and the whimpering of terrified cadets. Danny raised his hand. Rilthak paused mid-gesture, clearly not expecting questions. "Yes, The human in the back. Danny stood up, and Prill made a sound like air escaping from a punctured balloon. That's real impressive and all, sir. Beautiful animal, honestly, but I got a question. Speak. Is a house trained? The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Vornis stopped pacing. Rilthak's scales shifted to a darker shade. What? House trained, Danny repeated. Does it know not to make a mess indoors? Because if we're going to be studying alongside these things, or if they're going to be on campus, I like to know if it's going to, go where it's supposed to. We had a dog once that wasn't properly trained, and it was a whole situation. Somewhere in the stands, someone made a choking sound. An instructor's datapad clattered to the floor. Rilthak's mouth opened and closed several times. You dare mock the apex predator of the SAR, then homeworld? Not mocking, sir. Genuine question. It's a big animal, probably eats a lot, which means, well, basic biology and all. Danny scratched his head. Also, does it get along with other species? My roommate's got this thing that looks like a floating jellyfish, and I'd hate for there to be an incident. Prill had covered his face with all four of his arms. The head instructor, an elderly being whose species Danny hadn't learned yet, spoke into a communicator. Note the human cadet's name. Walsh Daniel. Earth origin. Further observation required. Rilthak managed to compose himself, though his tail was now lashing back and forth. The Vornis is not a pet, Cadet. It is a symbol of ultimate predatory evolution. Right, got that, sir. Just thinking practically is all. Danny sat back down. The demonstration ended shortly after, with Rilthak storming off and the Vornis being returned to its container with obvious relief from the handlers. As cadets filed out, Danny heard whispers in a dozen languages. Most of them included his name. Prill finally uncovered his face. You have either made yourself famous or signed your death warrant. Possibly both. Did I say something wrong? You treated the Sarthan's ultimate display of dominance like a concern about pet waste management. Danny shrugged. Well, it was a legitimate question. As they left the arena, neither of them noticed Commander Rilthak watching from an upper observation deck, his expression unreadable. Beside him, an instructor murmured, "The human shows no fear, either supreme confidence or complete ignorance." Find out which, Rilthak ordered, and find out what kind of predators his world produces that makes him this calm around Vornis. I want to know what Earth is hiding. 3 days after the arena incident, Danny discovered that becoming infamous at a galactic military academy happened faster than getting a bad reputation in a small town. At least back home, people knew him before deciding he was trouble. Here, species he never even met were pointing and whispering when he walked past. The cafeteria went quiet when he entered. Dozens of species, hundreds of cadets, and suddenly everyone found their food fascinating. Danny grabbed a tray and joined the line, trying to figure out which of the color-coded stations served food compatible with human biology. The green markers meant safe for carbon-based life forms. He picked something that looked like rice mixed with vegetables and found an empty table in the corner. It stayed empty for about 30 seconds before Prill skittered over with his own tray of what appeared to be flavored paste. You should not sit alone, Prill said, settling his segmented body onto the bench. It makes you look weak, or it gives folks space if they're uncomfortable around me. The Sarthan cadets are very uncomfortable around you. I heard Sklath talking in the training hall. He thinks you insulted their entire species. Danny chewed something that tasted vaguely like mushrooms. Didn't mean to. Just asked a practical question about whether their ultimate predator was house-trained. Yeah. Prill's antennae drooped. My friend, I must ask, does Earth have no dangerous animals? Is that why you do not understand the fear the Vornis inspires? Danny nearly choked on his food. No dangerous animals? Prill, we got bears that'll tear through a car door to get a sandwich. Wolves that hunt in packs smart enough to set up ambushes. Big cats that can drag a full-grown deer up a tree. Hippos that kill more people than almost any other large animal. Crocodiles older than most governments. And that's just the land stuff. The ocean's got things that'll swallow you whole or poison you with a touch. Prill's translator made a sound like static. Then why are you not terrified of Vornis? Because I grew up around animals. You learn to read them, Body language, sounds, what they're focused on. That Vornis in the arena wasn't hunting. It was stressed and defensive. There's a difference. Before Prill could respond, a shadow fell across their table. Danny looked up to find 3 Sarthen cadets standing over them. The one in the middle, bigger than the others, had to be Sclath. His scales were deep bronze, and his eyes held the same cold calculation as Commander Rilthax. "The human who makes jokes," Sclath said. "You will come with us to the training facility. Now, I got class in 20 minutes. This will not take long." It wasn't a request. Prill started to stand, but Danny waved him down. "It's all right. I'll catch up with you later." The walk to the training facility was silent, except for the clicking of Sarthen claws on the corridor floor. They led Danny to one of the combat simulation rooms, but it wasn't set up for simulation. In the center of the room, behind a portable energy barrier, was a juvenile Vornis. It was smaller than the one from the arena, maybe the size of a horse instead of an elephant, but it had the same armored plating and the same rows of teeth. The creature paced back and forth, agitated. "This is a young Vornis," Sclath said, "barely past its infant stage. Still, it has killed 2 handlers who showed disrespect. You made the Sarthen people look foolish with your questions about training. Now you will face even a young Vornis, and we will see if you maintain your casual attitude." Danny walked closer to the barrier, studying the creature. The Vornis noticed him and snarled, but its ears were pinned back and its weight shifted toward its haunches. "You guys stressing it out on purpose? We do nothing." The Vornis is simply revealing its nature as an apex predator. Not scared. Look at how it's holding itself. That's not hunting posture. That's fear aggression. Something's got it worked up. Danny glanced around the room and spotted the problem. The lights. They're flickering at a frequency that's probably bothering it, and the air circulation is blowing your scent directly at it. To the Vornis, you're looming predators in its space. One of the other Sarthen cadets hissed something in their own language. Sclath silenced him with a gesture. "You claim to understand the Vornis better than those who evolved alongside it. I claim to understand scared animals. They're pretty much the same across species." Danny studied the barrier controls. "You mind if I try something?" "Try what?" "Calming it down." Sclath's laugh was harsh. "The human wishes to soothe the savage Vornis. This I must see. Go ahead. When you panic and run, we will know Earth produces only cowards who hide their fear behind words." Danny asked them to dim the lights and adjust the airflow. Sclath allowed it, confident in the upcoming humiliation. With the environmental changes made, Danny moved to stand at the barrier where the Vornis could see him clearly. He didn't make sudden movements, didn't shout or try to dominate. Instead, he angled his body slightly sideways, making himself less threatening. He kept his breathing calm and even. The Vornis watched him with those sulphurous eyes, growling low. "Easy there," Danny said quietly. "Nobody's going to hurt you. I know this place is weird and scary. New sounds, new smells, bunch of strangers. That's rough." The growling didn't stop, but it changed pitch slightly. The Vornis tilted its head, confused by this tiny creature's lack of fear. Danny continued talking, his voice steady and low. He wasn't saying anything important, just maintaining a calm presence. He'd done the same thing with spooked horses, with nervous dogs, even once with a young bear that wandered too close to the farm. Slowly, very slowly, the Vornis's posture shifted. The ears came up slightly. The weight distributed more evenly. The creature was still wary, but the panic fear was fading. "Impossible," one of the Sarthen whispered. Danny reached into his pocket and pulled out part of his lunch he'd wrapped in a napkin, some kind of dried meat from the cafeteria. He tossed it through a small opening in the barrier, making sure it landed well away from both him and the Vornis. The creature sniffed the air, then cautiously approached the food. It ate quickly, eyes never leaving Danny. "It is accepting food from him," Sclath said, his voice hollow. "No Vornis accepts food from strangers. They take only from proven pack members or after dominating their prey, or from someone who's not acting like a threat," Danny said. He tossed another piece of meat. This time the Vornis moved a bit faster, a bit less hesitant. The door to the training room opened. An instructor Danny didn't recognize entered, took one look at the scene, and started entering commands into a datapad with urgent efficiency. Sclath and his friends were silent now, watching as the human continued his quiet interaction with a creature that had been trained into their species' mythology as the ultimate predator. The Vornis was now sitting, still alert but no longer aggressive, occasionally glancing at Danny as if expecting more food. The instructor looked up from her datapad. "Cadet Walsh, you will come with me." Immediately, as Danny followed her out, he heard Sclath mutter to his companions in their own language. Prill had been teaching Danny a few words. He caught enough to understand the gist. What is Earth hiding from us? The instructor led Danny through corridors he hadn't seen before, past security checkpoints that required retinal scans and biosignatures. They ended up in an observation room overlooking what appeared to be a command center. Through the glass, Danny could see multiple species working at stations displaying star charts and data streams. "Sit," the instructor said. She was a tall being with silver skin and too many fingers. Her name tag read Commander Urith. "We need to discuss Earth. Am I in trouble?" "That depends. How much did your homeworld tell you before sending you here?" Danny shrugged, filled out some forms, passed some tests, got on a transport. They said the Academy wanted a diverse group, and Earth was invited to send cadets. I volunteered. Urith pulled up a holographic display. Earth rotated slowly in blue and green. Your planet's initial survey classified it as moderate threat level. Standard gravity, oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, carbon-based megafauna. Nothing that suggested your species would be remarkable in any particular way. We're pretty average, I guess. That assessment is looking increasingly inaccurate. Urith swiped through files. Images appeared. Grizzly bears, saltwater crocodiles, great white sharks, Bengal tigers, African elephants. Your survey team provided a basic fauna list, but they categorized these creatures as similar to predators on other worlds. They failed to mention the density. Cadet Walsh, your planet has apex predators in nearly every ecosystem. Well, yeah, we got different environments, different animals evolved to handle them. Most worlds have one, perhaps two apex species. Yours has dozens. And more concerning is this. She pulled up another file. The image showed a young girl walking a German shepherd on a leash. Explain this. That's a dog, probably somebody's pet. This creature shares 98% genetic similarity with the gray wolf, which your own files list as a pack-hunting apex predator. Yet your species keeps them in your homes. With your children. Danny smiled. Dogs are great. Loyal, smart, good companions. We've been breeding them for thousands of years. The silence that followed was heavy. Urith's skin color shifted to a pale blue. You domesticated an apex predator. Successfully. I mean, they're not really apex predators anymore. We bred them to be friendly and helpful. They guard our houses, help with work, keep us company. Some folks even use them for therapy. Urith sat down heavily. Do you understand what you were describing? Most species in the galaxy view predators as threats to be avoided or eliminated. The SAR then are unusual in their ability to coexist with Vornis, and even they maintain strict separation and control through fear and dominance. You are telling me humans took a predator and turned it into a family member through selective breeding. Also cats, horses, ferrets. We've got relationships with dolphins, elephants, even some birds of prey. It's not that weird. It is extraordinarily weird, Cadet Walsh. Urith pulled up more files. I've spent the last 3 days reviewing Earth's complete records. Do you know what I found? Your species has elimination protocols for only 2 categories of fauna. Pests that damage crops and parasites that spread disease. Everything else, even your deadliest predators, you have conservation programs for. You actively work to keep them alive. They're important for the ecosystem. Plus, they were here first. This philosophy is alien to most of the galaxy. The Highborn Collective, Prill's people, evolve as prey species. Their entire civilization is built on avoiding predators. The SAR then evolved as predators, but maintained dominance through strength and fear. Dozens of other species fall somewhere on that spectrum. Then there's Earth, where predator and prey species formed a civilization together, where you keep predators as companions, where your children are taught to respect dangerous animals rather than simply fear them. Danny wasn't sure what to say to that. It had never seemed strange before. Urith continued. Commander Rilthak is demanding a full review of Earth's threat assessment. He believes you are hiding military capabilities. He cannot comprehend that a species could face Vornis without fear unless they have faced worse. We have faced worse. Earth's had some real monsters over the years. But that doesn't mean we're some kind of warrior race. We just learned to live with danger instead of letting it control us. That attitude is precisely what concerns the Sarthan. It also fascinates several other species. Urith closed the displays. The Academy directors have decided to accelerate a planned exercise. Normally, first-year cadets undergo wilderness survival training in their 3rd month. You will be going in 2 weeks. Okay, what do I need to prepare? The exercise takes place on a moon we have designated as a biological preserve. It contains fauna from multiple homeworlds, including young Vornis. Cadets are deployed in species groups to their own sectors and must survive for 3 days. You, being the only human, will go alone. Danny thought about that. 3 days in the wilderness wasn't much different from camping trips back home. Sounds manageable. Other cadets will have advanced equipment, weapons, and shelters. What will you bring? Knife, rope, fire starter, and whatever food rations you provide. Maybe a water filter. Urith's color shifted again. No weapons. Don't really need them if I'm not planning to hunt anything big. The goal is to survive, not to fight everything I come across. And if you encounter a Vornis, then I'll do what I did in the training room. Read its behavior, give it space, avoid being threatening. Most predators don't want to fight unless they're starving or defending territory. If I'm smart about where I set up camp and don't act like prey or a rival, should be fine. Urith stood and walked to the observation window. Down in the command center, someone was arguing with a Sarthan officer. Do you know why the Sarthan are so invested in maintaining their image as the galaxy's premier warrior species? Not really, because it is all they have. Their technology is adequate but not exceptional. Their resources are limited. What they possess is a reputation built on the fear of Vornis and the perceived strength that comes from surviving alongside such creatures. You're undermining that reputation simply by existing. I'm not trying to compete with anyone. That is what makes it worse for them. You're not trying, and yet you succeed where they struggle. Sclath reported that you calmed a juvenile Vornis with nothing but patience and food. Do you know how Sarthan youths prove themselves worthy of adulthood? How? They must survive an encounter with a Vornis in the wild. 1 in 10 does not survive. 1 in 5 is permanently injured. It is the defining moment of their culture, and you treated it like calming a nervous pet. Danny felt a flicker of guilt. I didn't mean to disrespect their traditions. I know. That is the problem. Urith turned back to face him. The wilderness trial will be observed by the entire academy. Sclath has already petitioned to be deployed in a neighboring sector. He wants to witness your failure. Others want to see if Earth truly deserves its new classification. New classification. As of this morning, Earth has been upgraded from moderate threat to high threat status. Not because of your weapons or technology, but because of what you represent. A species that views the deadliest creatures in the galaxy the way most species view tools or obstacles. Something to be understood rather than simply feared. Danny stood up. Commander, I'm just a farm kid who grew up around animals. I'm not special. That is what every human says when we interview them. You are all just ordinary people from an ordinary world. Urith's color shifted to something that might have been amusement. Yet somehow, that ordinary world produced a species that befriends wolves and asks if apex predators are house-trained. Dismissed, Cadet Walsh. Prepare for your trial. I suspect it will be more interesting than you anticipate. Walking back to his quarters, Danny found Prill waiting outside his door. The Hive-born was vibrating with nervous energy. Is it true? Are they sending you alone into the wilderness with Vornis? Yeah, looks like it. You will die. Probably not. Danny, please. Take this seriously. The Vornis are not like Earth animals. Danny put a hand on Prill's shoulder, feeling the cool exoskeleton beneath his palm. Prill, all animals are pretty much the same when you get down to it. They want to eat, sleep, avoid pain, and survive. If I respect that, we'll be fine. You are either the bravest being I have ever met or the most foolish. Back home, folks said both at different times. Danny grinned. Want to help me pack? The transport shuttle dropped Danny at the edge of Sector 7 just after dawn. The wilderness moon hung in the sky of a gas giant that took up half the horizon, painting everything in shades of orange and purple. The air smelled clean, with a hint of something like pine mixed with ozone. Around him, the forest was already awake. Something chirped in the canopy. Something else answered from deeper in the woods. Danny shouldered his pack and started walking, looking for a good spot to set up camp. Back at the academy, every cadet had access to a monitoring feed. Hundreds of species were watching multiple screens as their classmates deployed across different sectors. The room was tense with anticipation. Prill sat in the front row, his antennae drooping with worry. On one screen, Danny was calmly examining trees and testing soil with his fingers. On another screen, a group of Sarthen cadets were setting up an elaborate defensive perimeter with motion sensors and energy weapons. Sclath was with them, but he kept glancing at a data pad showing Danny's sector location. The human brought almost nothing. Someone whispered, "Is he trying to fail?" Commander Urith stood at the back of the monitoring room, her skin shifting through concerned colors. Next to her, Commander Rilthak watched with unreadable eyes. Danny found what he was looking for about an hour into his hike. A small clearing near a stream, elevated slightly above the surrounding terrain. Trees provided cover, but weren't so dense that he couldn't see what was coming. He checked for animal signs, found some tracks that looked vaguely like deer prints, and decided they weren't fresh enough to worry about. He spent the next few hours setting up a basic camp. A simple lean-to shelter using branches and the emergency tarp from his pack. A fire pit with rocks arranged to reflect heat. He gathered dry wood and kindling, storing it where it would stay dry. By afternoon, he had a small fire going and was boiling water from the stream. The monitoring room was confused. Why is he not fortifying his position? A cadet asked. He is making himself visible to predators, another added. The fire and smoke will attract attention. Urith said quietly. He is making himself known. There's a difference between hiding from predators and coexisting with them. Danny ate some rations and spent the late afternoon exploring his immediate area. He found more tracks, some scat from something that ate plants, and a tree with claw marks about 7 feet up. Something big lived in this area, but the marks were old. He made note of it and headed back to camp. Night fell fast on the moon. The gas giant provided some light, but the forest became a maze of shadows. Danny fed his fire and settled in, listening to the sound around him. Insects, or the local equivalent. Something howling in the distance. The rustle of leaves that might have been wind or might have been something moving that he wasn't worried. Everything sounded like normal animal behavior. No alarm calls, no sudden silences that would indicate a predator on the hunt. What Danny didn't know was that 3 sectors away, Sclath was watching a different kind of screen. One that wasn't part of the official monitoring system. One that showed the locations of every tagged animal in the preserve, including the Vornis .2 of his companions, stood with him in their shelter. "Are you certain about this?" one asked in their own language. "The human has made fools of us all," Sclath replied. "He treats our apex predator like a domestic animal. He shows no respect for what the Vornis represents. When he fails here, when he calls for emergency extraction and terror, the galaxy will see that humans are nothing special. They will see that Earth's casual attitude toward danger is ignorance, not strength. And if he does not fail..." Sclath entered commands into his datapad. On the screen, 3 Vornis markers began moving towards Sector 7. Someone had remotely deactivated the containment fields in their holding area. The creatures were free and heading toward the one sector with a human scent they would not recognize. "He will fail," Sclath said. In the monitoring room, alarms started going off. Instructors rushed to their stations. On the screens, automated warnings flashed red. "Containment breach in the Vornis habitat," someone called out. 3 adults are loose. Where are they heading? Urith demanded that a technician check the tracking data, and her face went pale. "Sector 7, the human sector." The room erupted. Some cadets cheered, thinking this would prove the human was overconfident. Others looked horrified. Prill made a sound like wind through a broken pipe. Rilthak stepped forward. Initiate extraction protocol. Get the human out before the Vornis arrive. Sir, extraction takes 15 minutes to authorize and deploy, the technician said. The Vornis will reach his sector in 12 minutes. Danny was adding wood to his fire when he heard them. Not the sound of the creatures themselves, but the sound of everything else going quiet. The insects stopped. The distant howling ceased. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath that he stood slowly and scanned the darkness beyond his firelight. 3 pairs of sulphurous yellow eyes reflected the flames from the edge of the clearing in the monitoring room. Someone gasped. 3 full-grown Vornis. He is dead. The creatures stepped into the light. They were massive, bigger than the one from the arena. Their armored plates scraped together as they moved. Drool dripped from rows of teeth designed to crush bone. They spread out, approaching from 3 different angles with the coordination of experienced pack hunters. That Danny's heart was racing, but his mind was clear. These weren't the calm, curious movements of an animal exploring. This was hunting behavior, and he was the prey. He kept his eyes on the largest Vornis, the one in the center. Making eye contact with predators was usually a bad idea, but running was worse. He needed to disrupt their hunting pattern, make them reassess whether he was worth the trouble. Easy there, big guy, he said, his voice steady despite his fear. I'm not what you're looking for. Just passing through. The lead Vornis tilted its head, confused by the calm tone from something that should be screaming or fleeing. Danny slowly reached for a stick near his fire, moving with deliberate care. Quick movements would trigger the chase instinct. He picked up the stick and, in one smooth motion, thrust it into his fire and pulled out a burning branch. He held it high, making himself look bigger and introducing a new element to the equation. Fire. The Vornis had never seen a creature use fire as a tool. They stopped, uncertain. That's right. Danny continued, his voice calm but firm. This is my space. You don't want to be here. Too much smoke, too much noise. Better hunting elsewhere. He took a step forward, still holding the torch high. The Vornis on the left growled low, a sound that vibrated through the ground. But it also took a step back. Danny took another step forward, then another. He was walking toward 3 apex predators with nothing but a burning stick and a voice that refused to shake with the fear he absolutely felt in the monitoring room. Nobody breathed. The lead Vornis made a decision. It huffed, a sound that might have been frustration or might have been respect for prey that refused to act like prey. It turned and moved back into the darkness. The other 2 followed after a moment's hesitation. Danny stood there, torch still raised, until the yellow eyes disappeared completely. Then he slowly backed up to his fire and sat down heavily, his legs suddenly shaky. Okay, he said to the empty forest. That was intense. The monitoring room exploded into chaos. Cadets were shouting in a dozen languages. Some thought they'd witnessed a miracle. Others were convinced they'd seen proof that humans were insane. Urith turned to Rilthak. Your people have lived with Vornis for generations. Have you ever seen one back down from prey without a fight? Rilthak's expression was stone. Never. They do not retreat. They do not reconsider. They hunt until they succeed or die trying. He paused. That human should not be alive. Yet he is. Yes, yet he is. In Sector 7, Danny added more wood to his fire and checked his perimeter. Those Vornis might come back. They might bring friends. But for now, he'd survived the first night that he pulled out his communicator and recorded a short message. Day 1 log. Encountered some local wildlife. Managed to avoid conflict. Camp is secure. We'll continue monitoring situation. He sent it to the monitoring station, not knowing the chaos it would cause when they heard his casual tone describing a confrontation that should have killed him. Across the preserve, Sklath stared at his datapad in disbelief. The plan had failed. Worse than failed. The human had done the impossible. And somewhere deep in the forest, 3 Vornis were learning that not all prey species were the same. Some prey, inexplicably, impossibly, refused to be prey at all. Danny looked at his friends. one from a proud predator species and one from a fearful prey species, both transformed by exposure to Earth's different perspective. You know what's funny? Back home, I was just average. Nothing special about growing up around animals. Half the people I knew could do what I do. That is what terrifies and excites the council, Sclath said. If you are average for Earth, what does that say about your species' potential? A notification chimed on Danny's datapad. A message from Earth. He opened it and smiled. A video showed his family's farm. His younger sister was training the new puppy using the same patient techniques that had worked for generations. Simple, practical, effective. Want to see something? Danny showed them the video. This is my sister. She's 12. Training a dog descended from wolves. This is normal for us. Every kid learns this growing up. Prill watched in fascination. A child commanding a predator with simple words and treats. Incredible. It's not commanding. It's partnership. That's the difference. The dog wants to work with her because she's made it rewarding and fun. No dominance. No fear. Just mutual benefit and affection. Sclath was quiet for a long moment. My people have a saying. Show me your companions, and I will show you your future. Humans make companions of predators. What does that say about humanity's future in the galaxy? Maybe it means we help others make companions instead of enemies, Danny suggested. There's enough actual threats out there without treating every dangerous creature as an enemy. Some of them might just need understanding. The datapad chimed again. This time it was an official message. Earth had been granted full membership in the Galactic Council with special status. The message outlined new responsibilities, new opportunities, and new challenges. More humans would be recruited. Training programs would expand. Earth's approach to dangerous fauna would become a standard part of Alliance protocols. This is going to change everything, Danny said quietly. It already has, Prill replied. The question is how we guide that change. They sat together in comfortable silence, an unusual trio united by the simple truth that understanding beats fear, patience beats force, and sometimes the scariest question you can ask is whether the monster is house-trained. Outside, the academy continued its evening routines. But now, in the Sarthen Cultural Center, young cadets worked with Vornis in partnership instead of dominance. In the high-board dormitories, prey species studied predator behavior with curiosity instead of terror. In classrooms across the campus, instructors from dozens of worlds learned that Earth's greatest weapon wasn't technology or strength. It was empathy backed by courage and the unshakable belief that every creature, no matter how dangerous, was just trying to survive in the way it knew how. Understanding that, respecting that, and working with that instead of against it had been humanity's secret to surviving on a death world. Now it would be their gift to the galaxy. Danny looked at the message one more time, then at his friends. So, who wants to help me write a training manual? Something simple. Introduction to interspecies communication for beings who think apex predators can't be reasoned with. Sclath laughed, a sound that would have been impossible months ago. That title needs work. Probably, Danny agreed. But we've got time. And honestly, if we can teach the galaxy that house training is a valid question to ask about any creature, we'll have done something worthwhile. Prill raised what might have been the equivalent of a glass. To Danny Walsh, the human who asked the question nobody else thought to ask. To new perspectives, Sclath added. To not getting eaten by things that could definitely eat us, Danny finished with a grin. They laughed together, and somewhere in the preserve, 3 Vornis rested peacefully, their injured pack member fully healed. They had learned that not all small creatures were prey. Some, impossibly, were friends, and the galaxy would never be quite the same. Sir, I'm just one person. Not all humans are like me. We shall see. More of your people arrive next month. I suspect we will find that what you consider ordinary, the rest of the galaxy considers extraordinary. Prill rushed forward and wrapped his forelimbs around Danny in what might have been a hug. You were supposed to die, and instead you made friends with the monsters. This is very confusing, but I'm glad you are alive. Danny laughed. Thanks, Prill. Come on, I need about 12 hours of sleep, and then you can help me figure out how to explain all this in a report. As they walked toward the dorms, Danny didn't see the way other cadets looked at him now. Not with fear or contempt, but with curiosity and cautious respect. The human who asked if the apex predator was house-trained had proven that maybe, just maybe, it could be 0.4 months past and the academy transformed in ways nobody had predicted. Danny's actions on the wilderness moon had rippled through the entire institution like a stone dropped in still water. The Sarthen Cultural Center, once dedicated solely to combat training and dominance displays, now housed a new wing. Danny stood at the entrance, reading the sign that had been translated into 14 languages. Interspecies Communication and Behavioral Studies Center. Inside, young Sarthen cadets worked with Vornis under controlled conditions, learning techniques that their ancestors would have considered heresy. Patient observation, positive reinforcement, reading body language instead of forcing submission through strength. The results were remarkable. Injury rates had dropped to nearly zero, and the Vornis themselves seemed healthier and more responsive. Sclath approached from behind, walking without his usual aggressive swagger. His punishment for the sabotage had been severe but fair, completed weeks ago. Now he worked as Danny's primary assistant in the program. "The council elders are here," Sclath said. "They wish to observe the demonstration." Danny nodded. A delegation from the Galactic Council had arrived that morning, the same group that had watched him calm the injured Vornis months ago. They had questions. Lots of questions. The demonstration space was full. Cadets from dozens of species filled the viewing area. In the center arena, a young Vornis waited, recently rescued from a smuggling operation. It was malnourished, scarred, and deeply aggressive from abuse. The kind of creature most handlers would have euthanized as too dangerous to rehabilitate. Danny entered the arena alone. The council members leaned forward in their seats. One of them, an elder from a species that resembled crystalline coral, spoke through a translator. "Is this wise?" The creature's history suggests extreme volatility. Commander Urith, now the program's official supervisor, replied calmly. "The human knows the risks. Watch." Danny approached the Vornis using every technique he'd refined over the past months. Slow movements, calm voice, reading the micro-expressions in the creature's posture. The Vornis snarled and snapped, testing him. He gave it space, showed no aggression, and simply waited. Time passed. 5 minutes. 10. 20. Gradually, the Vornis's defensive aggression faded. Curiosity replaced fear. When Danny offered food, the creature hesitated, then accepted it. By the end of the hour, the Vornis was calm enough for Danny to perform a basic health assessment. The council chamber erupted in quiet discussion. After the demonstration, Danny joined the council meeting. Prill was there too, having become an unofficial bridge between human thinking and galactic understanding. His thesis on Earth's domestication practices had been published across multiple worlds and sparked debates in xenobiology departments everywhere. The Coral Elder spoke first. "Cadet Walsh, we have reviewed your world's complete records. What we initially dismissed as a standard survival world, we now understand to be something unprecedented. Your species formed civilization alongside apex predators. You domesticated some, learned to coexist with others, and developed a culture that values understanding over dominance. This is unique in our records. With respect, Elder, I don't think it's that special. We just adapted to our environment. That is precisely what makes it remarkable," another council member added. "Most species adapt by eliminating threats or fleeing them. Earth adapted by forming relationships with threats. The implications are staggering." Commander Rilthax stood. In the months since the wilderness trial, his perspective had shifted dramatically. "I spent my entire life believing the Sarthen way was the only way. Strength through dominance. Survival through force. Watching the humans work with Vornis, seeing results that surpass anything my people achieved in millennia, I have learned humility." He turned to Danny. "Your people are being offered a unique position in the Alliance. Not as soldiers, though you would excel. Not as scientists, though your understanding of biology is profound. Earth will serve as the Alliance's specialists in what we are calling diplomatic xenobiology. When we encounter new species, especially predatory or dangerous ones. Humans will be our first contact specialists. That's a lot of responsibility, Danny said. It is, but you have proven capable. More humans arrive next week. We have requests from 17 member worlds for human consultants to help with their own dangerous fauna. Worlds that have struggled with predator problems for generations suddenly have hope for better solutions. A new voice entered the discussion. One of the newly arrived human instructors, an older woman named Rachel Park, who had spent decades working with large carnivores on Earth. If I may speak, Danny represents one aspect of human-animal handling. But Earth has many different approaches based on different cultures and ecosystems. Marine specialists, desert trackers, jungle guides, Arctic survivors. We all bring different perspectives. This diversity is welcome, the Coral Elder said. In fact, it is essential. The Alliance faces many challenges beyond military conflicts. We have quarantined worlds with dangerous megafauna that prevent colonization. We have species on the verge of extinction that we cannot safely study. We have first contact situations that end in violence because we do not understand the species we encounter. Earth offers solutions we never considered. Prill raised a forelimb. If I may add perspective from a prey species, what the humans offer is not just techniques, but philosophy. They taught me that fear and respect can coexist with understanding. That the scariest creature can become a teacher if approached correctly. This has applications beyond animal handling. It has changed how I view all forms of conflict and communication. The meeting continued for hours, discussing implementation, training programs, and cultural exchange. Danny found himself in the surreal position of representing his entire planet's approach to dangerous wildlife. It was overwhelming and humbling in equal measure. Later that evening, Danny found himself back in his quarters with Prill and Sclath. The three of them had formed an unlikely friendship, bonded by the shared experience of watching worldviews shift. I received a message from my home world, Sclath said. My clan elders wish to meet you. They want to learn these techniques directly. I'm just a farm kid from Montana, Danny protested. There are people way more qualified. Perhaps, Sclath agreed. But you were the first to ask if the Vornis was house-trained. That question, asked in innocence or wisdom, I'm still not certain which, changed everything. It forced us to reconsider assumptions we had held for thousands of years. Prill added, my people are requesting human advisors as well. We wish to overcome our species' deep-rooted prey instincts. If humans can befriend wolves and work alongside bears, perhaps we can learn to be braver in our own way. Danny woke to the sound of movement outside his shelter. The gas giant was just starting to lighten the sky with pre-dawn colors. He lay still, listening. Heavy footsteps, multiple sets, the scrape of armored plates against bark. The Vornis were back. He carefully sat up and looked out through the gap in his lean-to. All three of them were there, about 20 yards from his camp. But they weren't stalking. They were just there, watching his fire pit where embers still glowed from the night before point one of them, the smallest of the three, was limping. Danny watched for several minutes. The injured Vornis kept trying to put weight on its front left leg and flinching. Something was wrong with its foot. The other two stayed close to it, occasionally making low sounds that might have been communication. In the monitoring room. The morning shift had arrived to find the night shift still there, refusing to leave their screens. Prill hadn't slept at all. When a Vornis appeared on Danny's feed, someone started to call for extraction again. Wait, Urith said. Look at the human. He is not alarmed. Danny slowly emerged from his shelter, moving with the same deliberate care as the night before. The Vornis tensed, but didn't retreat. He built up his fire, added some wood, and put water on a boil like it was just another morning. The creatures watched him with what might have been curiosity. You guys hungry? Danny asked conversationally. He pulled out some of his rations, the dried meat strips that were protein-rich and shelf-stable. He tossed one toward the injured Vornis, making sure it landed well short of the creature. The Vornis sniffed it, then ate it quickly. The other two watched closely. Danny tossed meat to each of them, slowly building something that might have been trust or might have been just simple transaction. Food for space. Over the next hour, The Vornis gradually moved closer to his camp, settling down at what Danny recognized as the edge of a comfortable distance for all parties. The injured one was still limping. "Mind if I take a look at that foot?" Danny asked, knowing they couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone would translate. He very slowly stood up and walked toward a point between himself and the injured Vornis. He sat down there, making himself smaller and less threatening. The creature watched him with those sulphurous eyes. Danny waited. After what felt like forever, the injured Vornis slowly extended its hurt leg. "Okay then," Danny said softly. "Let's see what we got." He examined the foot from a distance first. Something was embedded between the armored plates, right in the softer tissue of the joint. Looked like a sharp piece of stone, or maybe part of a branch. It was infected, swollen, and clearly painful. "That's gotta hurt," Danny murmured. "Need to get that out." In the monitoring room, Commander Rilthax spoke for the first time in hours. He's going to attempt medical aid on a Vornis. A wild Vornis with an injury that is making it aggressive and unpredictable. "Should we stop him?" someone asked. "How?" Urith replied. "He is beyond our reach. We can only watch." Danny used a long stick first, testing the Vornis's tolerance. The creature growled, but didn't pull away. He moved closer, inch by inch, talking the whole time in that same calm voice. The other two Vornis watched intently, ready to attack if he hurt their pack member. IT took nearly 30 minutes, but eventually Danny was close enough to touch the injured foot. He could see the foreign object clearly now. A piece of metal, probably from some old equipment left in the preserve. It had worked its way deep into the tissue. "This is going to sting," Danny warned. He gripped the metal shard carefully and pulled it out in one smooth motion. The Vornis roared, a sound that shook the trees and sent every monitoring alarm into the red. Its head swung toward Danny, jaws open, close enough that he could smell its breath. Danny didn't run, didn't flinch, just maintained eye contact and kept his breathing steady. I know, but it's out now. You're going to feel better soon." The creature's roar faded to a rumble, then to silence. It pulled its foot back and licked at the wound. After a moment, it looked at Danny again, and something in those alien eyes might have been recognition. This small creature had caused pain, yes, but had also taken away the deeper pain that had been there for days. The Vornis settled down next to Danny's camp, close enough that he could have reached out and touched its armored hide. The other two moved in as well, forming a rough semicircle around the human's fire. Sclath arrived at that moment. He had taken an unauthorized shuttle from his sector, convinced he would find the human dead or screaming for extraction. Instead, he found Danny Walsh sitting by a fire, eating breakfast, while three full-grown Vornis rested peacefully around him like oversized guard dogs. Sclath stood at the edge of the clearing, his weapon drawn, his mind unable to process what he was seeing. Danny noticed him and waved. "Morning. You here for the trial too? What have you done?" Sclath's voice shook with something between anger and awe. "What technology are you using to control them?" "No technology. Just helped one of them with an injury. They're just animals, Sclath. Smart ones, sure, but still animals. They respond to kindness and respect like most creatures do. Impossible. The Vornis cannot be tamed. They're the ultimate predator. They fear nothing and respect only strength." The injured Vornis raised its head and looked at Sclath. The Tsar then took an involuntary step back. "They don't look untamable to me," Danny said. "Look, I get that your culture has a certain relationship with these things. Lots of tradition and proving yourself and all that. But maybe there's another way. Maybe you don't have to dominate them to coexist with them." Sclath's weapon lowered slowly. "You shame me. You shame all Tsar then. We have lived with Vornis for thousands of years and never considered that they might be anything other than enemies to overcome. Not trying to shame anyone. Different perspectives, that's all. Earth's got plenty of dangerous animals. We learned a long time ago that understanding them beats fearing them." An official academy shuttle appeared overhead, descending rapidly. Instructors poured out, weapons ready, prepared for a crisis. They found a human and a Tsar then having a conversation while three Vornis lounged nearby like they were part of the camp. Urith was the first to speak. "Cadet Walsh, Cadet Sclath, You will both return to the academy immediately. The trial is suspended. Did I fail? Danny asked. Fail. Euryth's skin shifted through several colors. Cadet, you have done something no being in recorded galactic history has accomplished. You have formed a peaceful bond with apex predators from another world in less than 24 hours. The trial is suspended because we need to completely reevaluate our understanding of human capabilities and what this means for the Alliance. As they prepared to leave, Danny looked back at the three Vornis. The injured one met his eyes. Take care of that foot, Danny said. Keep it clean. The creature made a sound that might have been acknowledgement that on the shuttle ride back, Sclath was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I sabotaged you. I released the Vornis into your sector, hoping you would fail and prove that Earth was unremarkable. I see now that I was the unremarkable one. I let tradition and pride blind me to possibilities I never considered. Danny thought about being angry, thought about reporting him. Instead, he remembered that scared animals and scared people weren't that different. Both lashed out when they felt threatened. You know what? Danny said. How about we forget that happened and you help me write up a report on Vornis behavior instead? Seems like there's a lot your people could learn, and a lot I need to learn about Sarthen culture. Fair trade. Sclath looked at him with something approaching respect. You are very strange, human. Yeah, I get that a lot. Commander Rilthak was waiting when they landed. He stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. When Sclath began to confess his sabotage, Rilthak held up a hand to stop him. I know what you did. The investigation was already underway. You will face appropriate consequences. He turned to Danny. As for you, Cadet Walsh, Earth has been underestimated. That ends today. Your people will be offered positions as instructors in xenobiology and interspecies relations. What you have demonstrated is not just courage, but a different way of thinking that the Alliance desperately needs.